So between dissident government actors understanding that there's no way for them to win a conventional civil war, and an ever-growing preponderance of the American people wanting no part of even the political rancor we currently have, let alone an actual shooting civil war, the possibility of a conventional civil war is almost assuredly off the table. Does that mean we're completely out of the woods? Not by a long shot. There are three things that need to be considered. First, this is only single variable analysis, and whereas the supermajority of Americans can politically not want a civil war, there are certainly material conditions generated in the other operational variables that have the potential of forcing them into it. But those discussions will have to be in future videos. The second consideration is the threat of unsavvy and/or zealotous political actors. Like I said, career politicians understand that the majority of what they're doing is political theater, and that there's no actual upside in pushing the game too far. But new and thus unsavvy politicians may not understand that it's all a charade, or may just not understand where the lines are and accidentally cross one. In these cases, the warning signs to watch out for are any actions taken by a political actor that both legitimates and necessitates the arrest of or violence against that political actor. This would include things like any instance of a mayor or a governor overtly flouting federal law. This would both legitimate the arrest of that politician and require it to ensure the legitimacy of rule of law, the authority of the federal government, and the American people's faith that our judicial system holds everyone to the same standard. This would include if any of them actually followed through on threats made by Representative Nancy Pelosi, Governors Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker, and Mayors Karen Bass, Brandon Johnson, and Zoran Mamdani, that local and state law enforcement might arrest federal law enforcement. This is, of course, a violation of the Supremacy Clause of Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. State and local law enforcement have no jurisdiction over federal law enforcement engaging in federal law enforcement operations. Furthermore, state or local law enforcement interfering with federal law enforcement operations would constitute obstruction of justice. And not just for the officers directly involved, but for the whole chain of command that gave the order to interfere. This is why you see these politicians making threats, but no one actually does anything about it. This is all that political theater I was talking about. They know that if they actually did it, they'd end up in federal prison. They know where the line is. But they also know that the average American doesn't know what the Supremacy Clause is. And thus, they engage in bluster and antics for those political reality TV show votes, knowing that their fans are never going to hold them accountable for being full of crap. But if one of them did cross the line, the imprisonment of one's elected officials, rightfully or wrongfully, by one's political opposition will most likely be construed as an existential attack on one's belief system and way of life, which instantaneously elevates this conflict from "I think you're wrong" to "I'm fighting for my life." This in turn is one of the circumstances under which otherwise reasonable people can be incensed to violence and dragged into a war that they previously wanted no part of.